We have Barrister Taimur Malik, international law expert on Kashmir issues from Dubai. Sir, thank you for your time. Mr. Malik, Indian troops have martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir today. What does India want to gain by killing innocent Kashmiris?
It is very unfortunate that these events and incidences continue to take place in the IIOJK. And this is clearly a reflection of India's desire to quell dissent in the local population in Kashmir, and especially as it heads towards the second anniversary of the 5th August changes that it made unilaterally in relation to IIOJK. It wants to ensure that there are no protests in the valley.
Right, Mr. Malik, the EU lawmakers have voiced concern over rising human rights violations in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Do you think just raising concerns is enough to stop Indian brutalities in the valley?
It certainly isn't enough. We have had examples of Genocide Watch stating that there are enough early signs of a genocide taking place in the illegally Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as well as the reports by Human Rights Watch and other organizations. The international lawmakers and policymakers need to consider sanctions on India for this to be taken seriously. Merely raising concerns at their meetings is insufficient at this stage. India has been constantly violating international law and various United Nations resolutions in relation to Kashmir in the last few decades now.
Mr. Malik, Kashmir is to mark second year of the worst siege by the Indian military on 5th of August. What does international law say about Indian siege?
Under international law, a siege can be said to have taken place if there's a certain type of isolation of the local population and the territory. There are 3 types of isolation: physical, psychological, and electronic siege. And in this case, we can say that all 3 elements exist, and therefore the population and the territory is under siege. The other thing, from an international law point of view, we should say that it's an illegally occupied territory, and under international law, an occupation is a question of fact. Therefore, it doesn't depend that the existence of an occupation is voiced as such by the occupying power or not. It merely requires the situation to meet defined factual criteria in order for it to be classified as an occupation. And therefore, the current situation in IIOJK is an example where there's an occupation by an occupying force. The territory is not Indian territory. There is a hostile army, and India exercises complete authority and effective control over this territory, meeting the criteria for an occupation to be in place. It's an unfortunate situation. The result of all these actions and the 5th August 2019 actions, unilateral actions by India, is primarily to ensure certain demographic changes in the population, which could work to India's benefit in the future. And that's something that's also against international law and international norms, and something that the international community should take notice of, and not just by raising concerns, but by actually passing resolutions and perhaps even imposing sanctions in certain respects on India because of this.
Taimur Malik, thank you for speaking to Indus News.